Here we are in the living room of the Martello Tower at Sandycove, where James Joyce and Oliver St. John Gogarty lived sometime in the first decade of the 20th century, and it's where Stephen Dedalus and stately plump Buck Mulligan are living at the start of Ulysses. Here we go for a Joyce reading. In the gloomy domed living room of the tower, Buck Mulligan's gowned form moved briskly about the hearth to and fro, hiding and revealing its yellow glow. Two shafts of soft daylight fell across the flagged floor from the high barbicans, and at the meeting of their rays, a cloud of coal smoke and fumes of fry grease floated turning. "We'll be choked," Buck Mulligan said. "Haines, open that door, will you?" Stephen laid the shaving bowl upon the locker. A tall figure rose from the hammock where it had been sitting, went to the doorway and pulled open the inner door. "Have you the key?" a voice asked. "Dedalus has it," Buck Mulligan said. "Jenny Mac, I'm choked." He howled without looking up from the fire. "Kinch! It's in the lock," Stephen said, coming forward. The key scraped round harshly twice, and when the heavy door had been set ajar, welcoming light and air entered. Haines stood at the doorway looking out. Stephen held his upended valise to the table and sat down to wait. Buck Mulligan tossed the fry upon the dish beside him. Then he carried the dish and a large teapot over to the table, set them down heavily, and sighed with relief. "I'm melting," he said, as the candle remarked. "When? But hush! Not a word more on that subject, Kinch. Wake up. Bread, butter, honey, Haines. Come in. The grub is ready. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts. Where's the sugar? Oh, Jay, there's no milk." Stephen fetched a loaf and the pot of honey and the butter cooler from the locker. Buck Mulligan sat down in a sudden pet. "What sort of a kip is this?" he said. "I told her to come after 8. "We can drink it black," Stephen said. "There's a lemon in the locker." "Oh, damn you, and your Paris fads," Buck Mulligan said. "I want Sandycove milk." Haines came in from the doorway and said quietly, "That woman is coming up with the milk." "The blessings of God on you," Buck Mulligan cried, jumping up from his chair. "Sit down, pour out the tea there. The sugar is in the bag. Here, I can't go fumbling at these damned eggs." He hacked through the fry on the dish and slapped it out in 3 plates, saying, "In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti." Haines sat down to pour out the tea. "I'm giving you 2 lumps each," he said. "But I say, Mulligan, you do make strong tea, don't you?" Buck Mulligan, hewing thick slices from the loaf, said in an old woman's wheedling voice, "When I make tea, I makes tea, as old Mother Grogan said, and when I makes water, I makes water." "By Jove, it is tea," Haines said. Buck Mulligan went on hewing and wheedling. "So I do, Mrs. Cahill," says she. "Begone, ma'am," says Mrs. Cahill. "God send you don't make them in one pot." He lunged towards his messmates in turn, a thick slice of bread, impaled on his knife. "That's folk," he said very earnestly, "for your book. Haines, 5 lines of text and 10 pages of notes about the folk and the fish gods of Dundrum. printed by the Weird Sisters in the Year of the Big Wind. He turned to Stephen and said in a fine puzzled voice, lifting his brows, "Can you recall, brother, is Mother Grogan's tea and water pot spoken in Mabinogion, or is it in the Upanishads?" "I doubt it," said Stephen gravely. "Do you now," Buck Mulligan said in the same tone, "your reasons, pray?" "I fancy," Stephen said as he ate, "it did not exist in or out of the Mabinogion. Mother Grogan was, one imagines, a kinswoman of Mary Ann." Buck Mulligan's face smiled with delight. "Charming," he said, in a filical sweet voice, showing his white teeth and blinking his eyes pleasantly. "Do you think she was quite charming?" And suddenly, overclouding all his features, he growled in a hoarse and rasping voice, as he hewed again vigorously of, "For old Mary Ann, she doesn't give a damn, but hissing up her petticoats." The doorway was darkened by an entering form. "The milk, sir." "Come in, ma'am," Mulligan said. "Kinch, get the jug." An old woman came forward and stood by Stephen's elbow. "That's a lovely morning, sir," she said. "Glory be to God." "To whom?" Mulligan said, glancing at her. "Ah, to be sure." Stephen reached back and took the milk jug from the locker. "The islanders," Mulligan said to Haines casually, "speak frequently of the collector of prepuces." "How much, sir?" said the old woman. "A quart," Stephen said. He watched her pour the measure and then into the jug rich white milk, not hers, old shrunken Pap's. She poured again, a measureful and a tilly. Old and secret, she had entered from a morning world, maybe a messenger. She praised the goodness of the milk, pouring it out. Crouching by a patient cow at daybreak in the lush field, a witch on a toadstool, her wrinkled fingers quick at the squirting dugs, they lowed about her whom they knew, dew silky cattle, silk of the kine and poor old woman, names given her in old times, a wandering crone, lowly form of an immortal serving her conqueror and her gay betrayer, the accompanying conqueen, a messenger from the secret morning, to serve her to upbraid, whether he could not tell, but scorned to beg a favour. "It is indeed, ma'am," Buck Mulligan said, pouring milk into the cups. "Taste it, sir," he said. He drank at her bidding. "If only we could live on good food like that," he said to her somewhat loudly, "we wouldn't have the country full of rotten teeth and rotten guts, living in a bog swamp, eating cheap food, and the streets paved with dust, horse dung, and consumptive spits." "Are you a medical student, sir?" the old woman asked. "I am, ma'am," Buck Mulligan asked. Stephen listened in scornful silence. She bows her old head to a voice that speaks to her loudly, her bone setter, her medicine man. Me she slights, to the voice that will strive and oil for the grave. There is all of her but a woman's unclean loins, of man's flesh made, not in God's likeness, the serpent's prey. And to a loud voice that now bids her be silent, with wondering, unsteady eyes.